we discussed about what is difference between Angular and React. React is a library and Angular is a framework. React is good for building interfaces and Angular is good for building the complete application interface. So depending on the requirement, we need both of them in real world development process. So we need Angular, we need React as a web developer. These are the basic things we learned in the last session. Now today we will take an overview of what is Angular. What is Angular? So a basic overview of what is Angular. So technically, a simple evolution about Angular I will explain here. Actually, Angular is a open source cross-platform. Angular is open source cross-platform framework maintained by Google and a large community of developers and organizations. So Angular is a open source cross-platform framework. So yesterday I explained the difference between a library and framework. Library can only build the application, but a framework can build the application and control the application flow. So Angular originally designed and developed by Google, and it is now maintained by Google and a large community of developers and organizations. They are contributing to Angular. Actually, now if you have to talk about Angular, so you should better say that Angular is an developer's platform. Angular is an developer's platform. Means the best way to describe Angular by the recent developers is to say that Angular is a developer's platform. What is meant by developer's platform? What is meant by developer's platform? Any idea? A developer's platform provides end-to-end solution for a developer from building to deploying. That means we need to build application, we need to test application, debug application, and deploy application. For that, we need various tools combinations. And a developer's platform provides all of them. That means a developer's platform provides support for all end-to-end tools. That means developers platform provides complete end-to-end solution for developer. End-to-end solution for developer. So that is from building, debugging, testing to deploying. So developers platform provides complete end-to-end solution. So Angular is not just only a framework, it is more than a framework. So better in the current situations, better to say that Angular is a developer's platform. It is a developer's platform. So it is not just having only a framework. It supports so many things. From building to deploying whatever you need, everything is provided by Angular. So that is the reason better you say Angular is a developer's platform. Actually, so it is a platform. So it is a platform So platform for building for building single page applications and progressive web applications. It is a platform for building what kind of applications? Single page applications and progressive applications. The platform for building single page applications and progressive applications. That means single page application, yesterday I told you. Progressive web applications are nothing but a progressive application will have an app-like experience in browser itself. For example, best example I will give you. Suppose you see, means what is a progressive web application? Progressive web application means suppose we have Photoshop, suppose Photoshop online. I'm using some Photoshop online. So you have so many Photoshop online tools. So I will select one option here. So photopia.com. Now when I open this, you can see that I'm opening a web related content in my browser. And actually this web related content is nothing but it looks like an application in the browser. That means it doesn't looks like a page. It doesn't looks like a page. Let's close this. So this doesn't looks like a page. When you open this, it usually looks like an application. Yeah. You can see that I selected some new project here. Yeah. Now, when you see this, you can see when I open this, you are currently looking at an app-like experience inside browser. It doesn't looks like a page. It is an application you are using in a browser. These kind of applications are progressive. Now we are in the generation of progressive web applications. That means in a browser, we need to provide app-like experience. So because people who are using mobile-like devices, they want an app-like experience in their device. They don't want like a page-like experience. That means we are moving forward from single page applications to progressive applications. We are just talking about single page application, but now the generation is moving from single page application to progressive web applications. So technically a progressive web application will have an app-like experience. Progressive web applications. Progressive web application. Yesterday already I showed you that single page application. So now we are moving forward from single page application to progressive. And Angular is good for building both single page applications as well as progressive web applications. So it is a developers platform built by Google and maintained by a large community of developers and organizations addressing the issues of building single page applications and progressive. Actually, Google means just evolution I will give, means evolution, means just a basic history I will give. So evolution is actually Google started Angular JS actually. Angular JS. Google started Angular JS in the early 2010. They started with Angular JS. So Angular JS is provided as a framework for developers for building what kind of application? Single page application. We started using Angular JS for building web applications. But so many problems we were facing with Angular JS. Angular JS is good for building single page applications, but we were facing a lot of issues with Angular JS. What are the issues with AngularJS? The problem with AngularJS is AngularJS is again it is JavaScript based. AngularJS is JavaScript based. AngularJS is JavaScript based. JavaScript based means it lacks OOP support, not completely OOP language. It is not completely an OOP language. That means AngularJS is again using JavaScript as a language, which is not completely an OOP language. If it is not an OOP language, extensibility issues will come. Extensibility issues will come. So AngularJS is another important problem is it is legacy type, legacy library. AngularJS uses a legacy library. Legacy library means entire library is loaded even to handle a small issue. That means entire library will be loaded into memory even to handle a small issue. That is what with the problem with legacy libraries. Now in the current generation, all technologies are moving from legacy to the modern libraries. The modern libraries are asynchronous libraries. We call them modular libraries. Even technologies like Java, .NET, PHP already moved from legacy to the modern. They moved recently. So a few years back, all are legacy type. Now they moved into the modern libraries. Modern libraries are nothing but modular library. Modular library means only the library that is required for the situation will be loaded. For example, to give a better idea at a beginner level, so for example, suppose you might have learnt about some Bootstrap, CSS, Bootstrap like concept. We have a file bootstrap.css. This is the file that contains all the Bootstrap classes. And this bootstrap.css approximately it occupies suppose 4 MB of space. And it contains approximately some 10,000 lines of code. 10,000 lines of code. Now what you are doing is you are importing this in a HTML page. You are linking it to a HTML page. And you are using in that HTML page a button and with a class called btn. And you are using just one or two classes. That means btn and btn primary, like this you are using. That means to use only these two features, you are importing this entire library. That doesn't make much sense. That means it is obviously heavy for application. Why you are using a 4 MB library for just using two classes? This is legacy type. This is legacy type. So if I can have library in such a way that it can load only what is needed for that particular situation, that is better. That is called as modular library. Now all technologies are going with modular libraries, and AngularJS uses a legacy library. So what is the problem with the legacy library? The problem with legacy library is slow in rendering. It is slow in rendering. It is heavy on applications. Heavy on applications. So the problem with AngularJS built by Google is it is JavaScript based. It is not completely object oriented. Extensibility issues are there. Legacy libraries, slow in rendering, heavy on applications. These are all there. In spite of this, it is good than other technologies that they have at that time. So one of the reason it trended so as a front-end technology. So because of its other abilities when compared to other technologies, that is JavaScript and jQuery and Knockout.js and all. So because of other abilities, it became popular, but it has a lot of technical issues. Another important is AngularJS is not built for your requirements. Google built AngularJS for its internal reasons. That means AngularJS is not designed for your requirements. It is built for its own requirements. Google built AngularJS for their reasons. That means before the world knows about AngularJS, Google was using AngularJS already internally for their applications. On developers' request, Google have made it open source. On developers' request, Google made it as open source. The Google given that as open source to the developers. That means it is not built for your requirements, but you are using it. Then what will happen? So lot of gaps. Lot of gaps. I hope you know what do you mean by gaps. Gaps means majority of the client requirements are not satisfied by Angular. So that means what client wants, everything is not there with Angular. In that case, what we have to do, we have to depend on lot of third party. We have to depend on lot of third party integrations. These are all the issues we were facing with AngularJS. AngularJS. Now what happened is Google thought of building something new which can overcome all these issues. That means Google was thinking for an alternative. Remember, alternative. They don't want to replace this. AngularJS, they don't want to replace because already millions of applications are built on AngularJS. And Google don't want to disturb that AngularJS, and still they don't disturb it. Even today, we have AngularJS. Many times people because they don't have a general idea on software technologies, they say that Angular is advanced to AngularJS. It's not like that. Even today, you have requirements for AngularJS. Even today, as a developer in companies, you have a requirement for AngularJS. That means, for example, so you go into this and let's search here. That means this is the Naukri site, and in the Naukri site we are searching for some developers. That means we are looking for some Java developer, .NET developer. So here suppose I say full stack developer, and when we are searching for full stack developer, so it gets some requirements here. And in the requirements, you can see some here, various requirements. And here you can see Angular is asked, React is asked in requirements. And in some locations, so you might even find this AngularJS. You can see here. So full stack developer, Infosys is asking AngularJS people. And Angular also. And people who learned about Angular cannot handle AngularJS. They have to learn AngularJS again. People who learned AngularJS cannot handle Angular. Again, they have to learn. Both are different. So Google started with AngularJS, and now they have an alternative called Angular. Now both are different. However, both belongs to similar category, but both are completely different. So some terminology, some features may come across with the similarities, but both are different. And this is not an old one. This is only one day ago posted by Infosys. So that means it is, the point here is AngularJS have lot of technical issues, but still several applications are built already. So they are running on AngularJS. So Google don't want to disturb them, but Google wants a better technology than AngularJS. So then what happened is Google started a new language called a new language called a new language called we have a language called ETScript. ETScript. Google started a new language called ETScript. The intention of ETScript, the intention of ETScript is to overcome the problems of JavaScript. What problems they were facing with JavaScript? They want to overcome the problem of JavaScript. Google started a language called ETScript, and they started a new technology. They started a new technology called Angular, and they named it as Angular 2. They named it as Angular 2. Before Angular 2, it was Angular JS. Angular JS is different. Angular 2 different. Angular is different. From Angular 2 onwards, we call Angular. If I am talking about Angular, means 2 and higher versions. Angular JS means it's previous. Now you cannot say it is previous because simultaneously both are developed. So is Angular 2 replacement? So Angular 2 is not replacement. Angular is an alternative for Angular JS. Is an alternative for Angular JS. Angular is an alternative for Angular JS. That means Angular is not replacement for Angular JS. It is an alternative for Angular JS. So now they started a language ETScript, and they started a technology called Angular. And it is an alternative for Angular JS to overcome all the issues they were facing with Angular JS. But suddenly they saw that actually, so Microsoft already have a language called TypeScript. They already have a language called TypeScript. So actually this TypeScript built by Anders Hazelberg. Anders Hazelberg, he introduced the built by Anders. He is the founder. You can say he is the architect of a language called C#. He is the architect of a language called C#, and he built a language called TypeScript. So, and TypeScript was built by Microsoft, and it is being used by Microsoft for its internal technologies. So, and suddenly Microsoft people saw that Angular Google people are also trying similar one language. And Microsoft asked Google team, why you are building a language again? We already have this. That means they found that ETScript was having all the similarities. And suddenly they asked Google, why can't you have a look on our TypeScript? Right now, Google is satisfied with TypeScript, and they stopped ETScript. They said that, okay, TypeScript is good. This is enough. This is what we are trying. So Google was trying with a new language, and it was already there. So then they thought of better drop this. Now no more ETScript, and better we use TypeScript. So the language is TypeScript, and the framework is Angular. That means you are using a technology supported by Microsoft and Google. That means the language belongs to Microsoft, and the technology is Google's, and a large community supporting this. So that means TypeScript is not Google's language. TypeScript is a Microsoft language. And it is not a new one. TypeScript is already there in Microsoft technologies, used for their Microsoft languages for addressing the client-side issues they were facing with JavaScript. Now the TypeScript is being used by Google. So that means Angular uses it. So now what are the features of Angular? So that means what are the features of Angular? When compared to AngularJS, what are the features of Angular? That means why its popularity grew. So remember, it is not replacement for AngularJS. So Google never asked developers to migrate from AngularJS to Angular. But developers showed interest in migration from AngularJS to Angular because of its abilities. One of the first important ability is one of its feature is Angular uses modular library. Angular uses modular library. So which is an alternative for legacy library. Modular library means the library that is required for the situation will be loaded. That means entire library is not loaded. Only the library that is required for the situation will be loaded. That means it is fast. And as per Google Angular team, it is 10x faster than AngularJS. It is 10 times faster than AngularJS. So as per the Google statistics, it is more faster than AngularJS. So the modularity, that means that makes the applications more faster. So another important feature is Angular comes as a platform for developer. What is advantage for platform for developer? It reduces the integration of third parties. It reduces the integration of third parties. It alone can manage so many things. We don't need to depend on several third parties. It reduces the integration of third parties. It alone can manage a lot of things. So that means it will provide end-to-end solution for developer. End-to-end solution for developer means from building to deploying. So whatever is required, everything is provided by Angular. So technically, Angular uses a modular library. So it is faster, it reduces integrations, and very important is internally it uses frameworks. It uses frameworks like MVC, like MVVM. That makes ability. That means these are responsible for handling data bindings. They are responsible for handling data binding. This makes data binding easy without much DOM references. That means Angular is completely decoupled from DOM manipulations. DOM. You know what is a DOM? Document Object Model. It is completely decoupled from DOM manipulations. No more get element by ID, get element by tag name, references, and everything. Internally, it uses a framework. It builds everything using the framework. So it handles everything by using the frameworks. So these are all the good features of Angular. Now, once we start learning Angular, we will detailedly learn everything. Because already I told you that we are not going to jump into Angular directly. So this is just an overview. When compared to AngularJS, what are the features? Now in the latest versions of Angular, so many features are there that you will learn while starting with Angular. Once we start with Angular, I will tell you the differences between various versions, what improvements they made, what changes they made in the latest. Actually, now the version that we are learning, that means versions. So many versions starting with Angular 2 in 2014, Angular 2 in 2014, and now we are dealing with Angular 13 released in 2022, updated in 2022. So that means we are dealing with this. And very important, you should know that as per Google standards, Angular up to up to 9 versions, Angular up to 9 versions are no longer supported, officially. That means they are gone. Up to Angular 9 versions officially not supported by Google itself. That means if you are still using these versions and you have any technical issues, they are not responsible for anything. And as per the Angular team, the current version, so actually even Angular 11 also in long term support now. That means currently active versions are only Angular 12 and 13. 12 and 13. Companies may use older version of Angular also. But if you can handle Angular 13, you can handle all. I will tell you the differences, what are the differences in every version. So when we start working with that means when we are learning Angular 13, we will discuss what was there in Angular 12 and how they changed in Angular 13. So, and if you can handle the latest version, handling older versions are same. Only you need one document. The document shows which are obsolete. That means which are no longer in use. Those obsolete things, if you have list, that is enough. That means you will not use them in older versions. You will use them only in the new. Right? New features we will discuss how happens here. Now, technically, this is the basic evolution of Angular. That means now I hope majority of confusion is cleared. So Angular JS and Angular. We are not learning Angular JS. We are learning Angular. And Angular JS is there. So that means Angular JS, so .org. This is official Angular JS. This is Angular JS. It is Angular JS. Now you see, officially they are saying that it is now in long-term support mode. Long-term support means, so we are not going to build new versions of this, but it will be still there. We are not going to build new versions of this, but it will be still there. And they already given an alternative, try the new Angular. That means they say that better go with this Angular, but it is not replacement. So it is just an alternative. And this is the new Angular. So this is the new Angular. This is the official of Angular. And you see, it says it is a modern developers platform. Many people tell that Angular is a framework. So yeah, of course, it's a framework. But for me, as a developer, experienced developers, it is more than a framework. It's not just a framework. That means for a learning level people, so Angular is a framework, is a definition, right? So, but for me as a developer, for experienced people as a developer, it is more than a framework. So that means it's a complete developers platform. And this has a lot of features, what I discussed here. In the latest versions, so many features will be there. We will discuss about all of them, right? As of now, you need to just understand the starting version of Angular is 2 and the latest version of Angular is 13. And the version of Angular that we are going to build is Angular 13. We are going to discuss Angular 13. Okay. But Angular requires a language. Without that language, you can't touch Angular. And that language we are going to see now. First, we are going to start with the language TypeScript. We are going to start with TypeScript language. So we are not going to handle anything in Angular. We can't handle anything in Angular without learning this language. Because so TypeScript language is the primary language required for building modern applications. So I will tell you the detail about this. It is not only for Angular. In React and other technologies also, so TypeScript is used as a language now, So whatever TypeScript you are going to learn here is enough. You can use this TypeScript for any technology that you are learning in future, anywhere, not only for Angular. So I will give a complete idea of TypeScript here. But TypeScript have lot of JavaScript basics, which I will ignore. I will not repeat JavaScript again. Already I told you, to learn Angular, you should come with knowledge of JavaScript. Without JavaScript, you can't handle, and I will not waste time in repeating those JavaScript concepts like variables, operators, statements, right? If conditions, for loops. I will not waste time in that, because that is not the area to concentrate here. So you have to come with good JavaScript knowledge as an Angular developer. Otherwise, you will not fit, right? I am not going to explain any JavaScript basics here at all, right? I am going to concepts. Wherever JavaScript basics comes, I will ignore them, because TypeScript uses a lot of JavaScript basics. I will ignore them. I will just give a point and ignore. What is new in TypeScript, that is only we are going to discuss here detail, right? And lot of new things are there, you will understand. So first point, what is TypeScript? What is technically TypeScript? TypeScript is strictly typed superscript of JavaScript. TypeScript is strictly typed superscript of JavaScript. So that is one basic thing. TypeScript is strictly typed superscript of JavaScript. Actually, what does this point means? What does this point means? That means already you know JavaScript. Already you know JavaScript, and if anybody knows JavaScript, I hope you know JavaScript have a strict mode. JavaScript have a strict mode, right? So what is the JavaScript strict mode is about? JavaScript strict mode is nothing but it will not allow the developers to violate the program standards. That means you have to write the logic in strict mode. So technically, for example, if I am writing here, so simple, suppose x equal to 10, so and so here I am defining document dot write x is equal to the value of x. So is it valid? So because x is a variable, and this variable is not declared, you are directly assigning a value into this variable. So this is valid. This is valid in JavaScript. Because JavaScript is by default not in strict mode. If JavaScript is not in strict mode, it allows these kind of violations of programming. Then I hope you have learned, you have to turn on JavaScript strict mode. How to turn on JavaScript strict mode? Use strict. By using use strict, you have to turn on the JavaScript strict mode. When you turn on the JavaScript strict mode, now x is equal to 10. This is invalid because you need to declare x. So, and strict mode, that is the strict mode. One second. So this is the strict mode. That is the strict mode of JavaScript. Now the point here is, so TypeScript is already in strict mode. TypeScript is strictly typed superscript of JavaScript. That means TypeScript is by default in which mode? Strict. That means you can simply say that TypeScript is implicitly strict. TypeScript is implicitly strict. That means it will not allow any kind of these programming violations, even you don't have any strict mode on, because by default it is in strict mode. So that is the reason TypeScript is called as a strictly typed superscript of JavaScript. Another important is TypeScript is strongly typed. JavaScript is not strongly typed. JavaScript is not strongly typed because you know JavaScript changes the data type according to the value assigned. That means JavaScript is implicitly typed. JavaScript is not strongly typed, but it is strongly typed. That means this is strongly typed. For example, I will give here a simple example here. Means just basic point here. Yeah. A simple program here, just a rough option here, demo. Yeah. So here I'm writing some script here. I'm writing script here where x equal to 10. Now x is number. And into that I entered John. This is also valid. Into that I entered true. This is also valid. You know JavaScript, no need to explain that. That is valid. That means now what is the X type? The X type is what type? The X type is Boolean. That means it is not strongly typed. It cannot prevent the type. But TypeScript is strongly typed. That means if you say number, it can handle only number. If you say string, it can handle only string. So that means actually, if it is strongly typed, we call TypeScript follows duck typing mechanism. TypeScript follows duck typing mechanism. Duck typing is a mechanism which is strict in data type and its structure. Duck typing is there in all programming languages. So even Python also supports duck typing technique. Duck typing means so it restricts the data structure. So there is no restriction for data structure in JavaScript, but a duck typing technique means it restricts the data structure. That means it is strongly typed, it is implicitly strict. Another important feature, it supports all object-oriented features. Features. That means in simple terms, you can say that. So TypeScript is a OOP language. JavaScript is not a OOP language. JavaScript supports only few features of OOPs, but it is not a complete object-oriented programming language. OOP language. It supports only certain features of OOPs. So TypeScript is complete OOP language. It supports all the features of OOPs. And what are the features of OOPs? You will learn in OOP concept. Extensibility, reusability, maintainability, testability. These all comes with TypeScript. Another great advantage of TypeScript is built with TypeScript. TypeScript is built with TypeScript. The ability of TypeScript is built with TypeScript. That means it even supports low-level features. Low-level features that can interact with operating system services. Generally, other languages cannot directly interact with operating system services. They need a support of a low-level language. That means other languages are built with some other language in the behind. They need low-level languages in the behind. But TypeScript is completely built with TypeScript. That means it can even control the operating system services. Don't underestimate TypeScript. Don't think that TypeScript is like JavaScript. TypeScript can build. It can build large scale applications individually. It can build large scale applications individually. That means don't underestimate TypeScript as a client-side script or something, right? Remember, TypeScript is one of the languages of Microsoft which they use for building large-scale applications. You are using TypeScript as a support for your Angular. Don't think that it is designed as a support for Angular. TypeScript is a very huge language for building very large-scale applications, even to control operating system services. It has larger abilities. That means at high level, it can build very large scale applications individually. It doesn't need any support of any other language. It can build individually large scale applications. So that we are using in our Angular. So as a client side script, that means we are using for client side support TypeScript. And don't think that TypeScript is designed for Angular. TypeScript is never designed for Angular. Angular is borrowing the options of TypeScript and using them. Right? Angular is borrowing the features of TypeScript and using because it doesn't have its proper language. So TypeScript individually is very huge. So you can build very large scale applications individually by using TypeScript. And how this TypeScript is going to work, what are the language features? That means there are so many things which JavaScript don't have, that you will start learning while learning TypeScript. It doesn't, you have a lot of things which JavaScript is not having. So which we will discuss step by step, we will learn about them. No need to give them as highlights, because those you will start learning and understanding once you start with TypeScript. This is the basic point. So it is strictly typed, it is strongly typed, it supports duck typing, it supports all features of OOPS. It is built with TypeScript, it supports low level features that can interact with operating services, and it has all the features to build a large scale application individual. So that is the concept of TypeScript. Evolution, I already told you. TypeScript, so architecture. So we will see the TypeScript architecture. TypeScript architecture means how TypeScript actually works. We will see the basic architecture. How TypeScript actually works, the basic TypeScript architecture. So how TypeScript works, for that you need to understand this architecture. So the basic TypeScript architecture I will give here. That means what actually TypeScript comprises of. Yeah, this is the basic TypeScript architecture. The basic architecture means what it actually comprises of and how it works. This is the basic TypeScript architecture. That means what actually TypeScript comprises of, how TypeScript actually works. The basic architecture of TypeScript is this. Let's see what actually TypeScript comprises of, how it actually works. So you see TypeScript at the bottom, it is having a core compiler. TypeScript is having a core compiler. You can see TypeScript is having a core TypeScript compiler. So at the bottom, you have the TypeScript core compiler. So you can see two compilers are present. You can see TypeScript is having the core compiler. This is the core compiler of TypeScript. At the bottom, you can see that. So let's say. So at the bottom, it is having, TypeScript is having, so core compiler. TypeScript is having core compiler, is having the core compiler. Actually, what is the responsibility of this core compiler? That means what is the responsibility of the core compiler? So see, the responsibility of core compiler is, it is responsible for checking the syntaxes. It is responsible for checking the syntaxes. It is responsible for checking the keywords. So keywords, it is responsible for checking the code snippets. Code snippets means the code blocks. You started the block, you ended the block code snippets. It is responsible for parsing the data. That means translating the data. It is responsible for managing input and output activities. All these are handled by the core compiler. That means a core compiler is responsible for identifying the problems in the code that you have written. That means once you write the code, first the code will be verified by the core compiler. It will check, are there any syntax problems? Are there any parsing problems? Are there any input output problems? And if there are any problems, it will report the problems. So TypeScript have a core compiler, which is responsible for compiling the TypeScript code. And very important is, this is the core compiler. So this is the TypeScript core compiler. This is the TypeScript core compiler at the bottom. And you see it internally contains so many other things like core.ts, program.ts, scanner.ts, parser.ts. TypeScript files will have the extension .ts. Imagine compiler is built with ts means the compiler built with ts. That is the discussing. That means entire language is built with its own language. That means it can directly interact with operating system, hardware services. So that means this compiling system, every file have a different role. Which you will understand in step-by-step stages. But what is the role of TypeScript core compiler? The role of TypeScript core compiler is, TypeScript core compiler is going to verify all the code that you have written. If there are any problems, it will report them. After compiling, this TypeScript is not understandable to browsers. Browsers cannot understand TypeScript. Developers are using TypeScript for their convenience. That means to overcome the issues of JavaScript, developers are using TypeScript, but browser don't understand TypeScript. So finally, browser understands only one language. What is it? JavaScript. Finally, browser understands JavaScript only. The browser don't understand TypeScript. TypeScript is being used by developers for the convenience of developer. And that means finally this TypeScript need to be translated into JavaScript again. And the work of translating TypeScript into JavaScript is done by standalone compiler. That means in TypeScript, you will have two compilers. You will have the core compiler, you will have the standalone compiler. What is the role of core compiler? The role of core compiler, so this is the core compiler. The core compiler is verifying the problems in the code. After it is successful, it gives to the standalone compiler. What is the role of standalone compiler? Translating the TypeScript into JavaScript. Now another important point here is, so this core compiler is verifying the syntax is correct, keywords are correct or not. From where it is verifying? From where it is getting the information to compile? From where it is verifying that syntax is correct, the keywords are correct? That means it is verifying from a language service. It is verifying from a language service. As per computer technologies, what is a service? As per computer technologies, what is a service? How you define a service in computing technologies? Service is a predefined business logic. Which you can inject and implement in any application. It have a support for several functions. In anybody who knows minimum programming in computers, he knows what is a service. Service is a predefined business logic. So we inject the service